So let me tell you the story about what happened to Ronaldinho.
Okay.
This man shows up to a Pepsi commercial
Mm.
with a bottle of Coke, a can of Coke.
Wow.
They saw it and they fired him immediately. He never worked for Pepsi ever again.
Remember when they did the 2012 FIFA World Cup
Yeah.
and like Pepsi was doing all these fancy ads? There was this one with Messi and they were in the desert and he was shooting footballs in the desert.
Yeah.
You see that? And then they made those cans, the ones with like the football outside on it, like they embedded, the football print
Yeah.
on the outside of a can.
Football print outside of a can. Oh,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Fancy stuff.
Yeah, I think I saw it too.
Fancy stuff, yeah.
Yeah. I remember like recently they did like ads with like Kendall Jenner and stuff, and there
Mm.
was a lot of backlash on it too.
Yeah.
But
I know they had, I think it was Britney Spears or someone that was part of the Pepsi thing
Mm-hmm.
for a while.
Mm.
But then I don't know what happened. But Coke is nice too, Just comes
Coke
up
is
with
nice.
names, stick them on the bottle. Going to
Yeah,
share
that's pretty cool.
going to share a Coke with
Mom, dad.
Jennifer.
Yeah, I've seen quite a bit. Kevin, BFF. They got really creative with that. That's pretty cool though.
But imagine there was like Coke but for like brown aunties kind of thing. So have a
Niloufar.
Coke with Shagufta auntie.
I don't think they can go that far. Yo, man, if they had to do every single name, that would be weird. Because I remember they brought it in Kenya as well, but they still had names like Kevin and Sarah and all that.
Okay.
They didn't have like, Ochieng
Mm.
or stuff. It was maybe it was, but yeah, they need to be really more like they need to like really do their research if they do something
Yeah.
like that.
That's true. Because like stuff like McDonald's, they have menu that are localized within the areas, right?
Yeah.
Like in the US, there's like the McRib,
Mm-hmm.
which you don't get here. In
Saudi, you have Macarabia.
you have the McRib,
I used
which
to
was
love
beautiful.
it.
That was
Oh,
beautiful.
that's all I used to eat.
What's it called? Like in India, you have like Makalu Tikki,
Oh yeah. In
right?
Pakistan, you have something similar to that.
Right? And like even pizza in Pakistan is like the best thing ever. Not
Yeah,
gonna lie.
it's very different.
Like-
But they're like even the milk is different.
Hmm.
Like if you notice, like even like the ingredients, like you look at, how we say pani alag hai yahan pe, the water is
Yeah,
different.
yeah,
I feel like that makes a big role in like how everything tastes.
yeah, for sure.
And
No,
then
I completely agree with you. I think
Yeah.
water is very different.
water,
like my
milk.
dad's very specific on the type of rice that he wants.
Mhm.
And his argument is quite simply that the water that they use for a specific rice is very different to something else, right?
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. I think he can even tell the difference between the types of rice.
Yeah.
So he knows what he likes and he knows what he doesn't like.
Yeah.
So that really like puts it out there.
I mean, yeah, some people are really good at that. Like they're very particular about their taste. Someone like me, like growing up when I was young, I used to be given a lot of different kinds of foods. So growing up, like for me, as long as it tastes decent enough, I'll have it. For a long time, like I could not tell you if something had enough salt or not. Like
That's true.
I would just eat whatever's on the plate. But I
Yeah.
feel like when you start, does your dad cook?
No, my dad doesn't cook.
But like, does he have an idea?
To an extent.
To
Like
an
my
extent?
dad, my dad's a legend when it comes to making omelets. Like he makes insane omelets.
Yeah. But like, I feel like once you have a little bit of experience in cooking, that's what happens. Like you have an idea of what's going in your food, then you can actually taste it. Like when I started cooking a lot more, I started making like keema, mincemeat, and all that stuff. I started to realize that whatever I put, even the littlest bit, makes a big difference
Makes
in the
a big
taste.
difference. No, that's true. That's
Yeah.
true. That's true. That's true. I think we've had a good few minutes of rambling on. I think we should introduce what we're doing here and why there's recording going on. So
Oh yeah, hello. By the way,
hello audience. So what we are doing here is we are two individuals who have time on our hands,
yeah,
and we thought, why not use the conversations that we have in everyday life and put them onto a platform that allows us to express our opinions on certain world topics that are not normally expressed on the news, or that require somebody with quote unquote specialized knowledge to have these conversations with.
yeah. Basically, yeah, because we've had a bit of experience in it, and we talk about this on a day-to-day basis. So we
Yeah.
thought, why not just share it with everyone else too,
Exactly.
and see what we're thinking about and whether it also makes sense to you.
Sure. So why don't we introduce ourselves?
Yeah, you can go first.
Okay, I'll go first.
Yeah.
I'm Siptain. I graduated from U of T last year with this beautiful individual here,
Saad.
and we have a degree in economics,
Yeah.
and we thought we should use our economics knowledge and put it to good use.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my name is Saad, and we've come from the same place.
Yeah,
We've grown up in the same place, so we have a lot of the same type of humor, I would say.
that's true. Yes.
And yeah, I mean, to be honest, he just texted me one day like, Saad, we should start a podcast.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Let's do it.
Yeah. So we're doing it.
We're
We're both from Pakistan, and we both grew up in the Middle East. So
Yeah.
that puts us in somewhat similar upbringings.
And our dads are both in finance.
That works too, right?
So we're all about it.
Yeah. So our podcast, we don't really know, as in we know what topics we want to cover, and we know where we want to take this podcast in terms of the stuff that we have discussed about talking. And obviously as the weeks and the months go on, as this podcast, as we continue throwing out episodes, we will have a better understanding on what topics work better for us, what we can discuss better,
and what our expertise are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because we, like, as having spent a lot of time in finance between the both of us, we know that there are certain topics in economics that we do not understand.
Yeah.
But there are certain things in finance, like stocks and stuff, that he understands way better than I do.
Yeah. And maybe if you talk about real estate, then he has a better idea than I do.
Yeah. So the aim of this podcast really is, as we said, to help in putting out the topics that we have conversations on, put them out there.
Yeah, basically. And we actually started making a list, and we're not going to promise that we're going to talk about every single one of them, but what we want to do is, what we're committing to do is, we will do our research beforehand, and we might bring in something as well, like an article of some sort, and we'll talk about it. And to be honest, it's not always going to be all facts. We're going to give our own opinions on it, what we think, given our background, what we think about it.
Yeah.
And we want to apply whatever we see out there to a day-to-day person. Like someone who goes to a job, does a 9 to 5, how does it affect you?
Yeah.
And how does like a change in tax in the corporate tax world affect how you work, say, in a normal shop?
Exactly.
Or as an employee. So, I mean, sometimes it's kind of straightforward and sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times politics can play a role, and there are other factors apart from just economics that will also affect what's going on. So you want to go through the list? Or?
So why don't we do this then?
Yeah.
So certain things so obviously we being in Canada, we are providing a more Canadian perspective.
Yeah.
I guess more localized. We could provide a more Ontario perspective.
Yeah.
But we will try to be as broad as we can in terms of where we get our news from. So as in, it's not focused purely on Ontario. It may be focused across Canada, and maybe certain things, because they'll have repercussions because of the borders that we have and the ties that we have. So as in ties to the US, economic ties to China.
Yeah.
And obviously another thing that we take into consideration is this global pandemic that we're looking through, right? Because we're looking through the lens of everything. Like, we're looking through this lens of COVID, right? We can't just...
Right now. For now, yes.
Yeah. So we will also put our opinions on what the future holds.
Yeah.
Like when COVID dies down and when things sort of return to a degree of normalcy, we will put our opinions there. Yeah.
And when the time comes, we'll put our opinions about what's happening at that time too. So I'm not saying that we're going to have the same opinion throughout, but if you stay with us, you'll see where we're going. Yeah.
Maybe and hopefully we could take this platform to the level where we bring in guest speakers. We would like to bring in some of our friends who also have that sort of background and are able to have a conversation using economic theory to help, strengthen the conversation that we have.
Yeah.
But also our attempt is to try and tap into some more professional people as well, people within the industry, people in the field, to bring authenticity to our podcast.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, just increasing our expertise in the area too, because we're genuinely just curious about it, and we want to know what's going on. And like someone like me who doesn't have a job right now and is looking for one, this is the best way for me to grow. Yeah,
improve skills. Basically, put the knowledge that we have gained and all the skills that we have gained to test. Because if as an economist, you technically really just have to do your master's to actually do anything in economics, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be very specialized. So as in, you'd have to really get into, like, say you were going to do labor econ, right?
Yeah.
You really have to get into something in labor econ to actually do anything with it.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
I don't know, advise on government policy or whatever.
And like I'm thinking about, for example, behavioral economics, and that's such a broad research-based topic that I need to figure out. Like I need to be sure if I really wanted to do it or not. You know. So
Exactly.
I feel like being able to dabble in different kinds of areas and fields within economics can help me get a better picture.
Yeah. So this is in a way like bar economics, or pub economics.
Yeah.
But at a slightly possibly educated level, because we've actually done a bit of econ.
Yeah.
But it's somewhat the same thing.
Yeah.
So why don't we run through a list of topics? Why don't we run through a list of topics that we want to talk about?
So the first one is Canadian economy once Soyb ends. So as you know, right, Soyb ends, CEWS.
The wage subsidy.
The wage subsidy. So basically what this is Canada's trying to give out subsidies to the people who are unemployed, who have worked in the previous year, and try to help them out economically, like financially. Because of course some people are struggling out there, and without a job, people who rely on a paycheck to paycheck kind of lifestyle, they need a little bit of help. So once this is over, what are the repercussions? So we're looking at in terms of people, we're looking at in terms of the government, and so on and so forth. And then basically the outlook of the economy as well.
Like the other day, my mom was telling me that Trudeau is reissuing Soyb for another time period.
Yeah.
Right. So considering the amount, think of it this way: a lot of people in Canada have lost their jobs.
Yeah.
Okay. Since I think in the past, just last year, Ontario lost 360,000 jobs.
Yeah, and a lot of them were youth.
A lot of them were youth.
People like
right?
us.
People who are don't have enough experience.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So, like we're going to see how adding more Soyb is going to affect the Canadian economy, because as we know, government spending is a factor of aggregate demand.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But if there isn't sufficient aggregate supply, we'll just have
inflation.
which we don't think is a good thing, because we know the government loves keeping inflation rate at 2%.
Yeah, so I mean, it's good to give money back to people, those who need it, but if you give in too much, then that could have its own repercussion, i.e. inflation.
Right. Another thing that we are going to look at is Canada's opinion on a negative interest rate. We know this has been done in in Europe.
Yeah, I think it's done in Europe, yes.
And Canada dropped their interest. Did they drop their interest rate from 0.25 to 0.1? Or I think that was just a conversation. I'm not really sure if they did it.
That was a conversation. I think they did it to 0.25, I think, a couple of months ago.
0.25 definitely.
Yeah.
0.1, I'm not sure.
0.1, but I'm sure they're probably talking about it now, because, I mean, they need it. But then again, what are the impacts of having a low interest rate?
Yeah.
And what we want to do is we want to go with this time and see what are the impacts on investment, what are the impacts of loans, or the impacts of the general money supply, and does it really affect inflation? Does it really help the day-to-day man?
Yeah, exactly. And like, if we do get a lower interest rate, obviously mortgages are going to be cheaper. We will have cheaper mortgages, but as you know, Canada is quite strict in terms of its financial lending capability. So the mortgage stress test will still be at about 4-ish%. Maybe it might even go higher, because we know that, because with a lower interest rate, obviously more people would want to borrow, right? Because they want to get houses. And we've seen that people are moving from Toronto to GTA. Further in GTA. Like, look at Barrie. Barrie houses are reaching like the $1 million mark.
I was looking at Kelowna, BC, and they are flying right now.
Exactly.
They're increasing a lot. Right? That's crazy too. Like Kelowna is like a small little city up in BC. Yeah. And people want to live there. So that's why prices are going up. So yeah, a lot of people are moving out of the metropolitan area, and that is also going to be that's going to bring an impact to the prices everywhere.
Of course. And
of course, interest rates will bring impact on that too. But I wanted to ask, so if interest rates are going down and people are still not borrowing as much as expected, what will happen to investments? Will it really impact the way the government's trying to
boost the investment?
Yeah, because high interest rates means you're going to get a lower return on your investments.
Yeah. You said Kelowna has a really...
it's an increasing rent rate.
Right? Like even like downtown. See, what's happening here is, like, we know that downtown is fairly resilient. Like even in 2008, when like everything went really bad, downtown Toronto was fairly stable.
Yeah.
fairly stable. The prices didn't drop too much, so people didn't lose too much of their shirt, you know. And right now, a lot of the investors for downtown are still holding, right? Because there hasn't been a sudden decrease in prices here in the condo market in downtown. And elsewhere, the condo market has dropped, and especially like rental rates.
Yeah, rental rates even here in downtown are crazy low.
I think the average rental rate for a one bedroom, like the average rental rate was about 2,200.
Yeah.
Now it's at the 2,000 mark. But if you really looked hard, you could find stuff for 15,
1,500.
16, 17, you know?
I know someone who was offered 1,500.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. Like for live in downtown, in the heart of downtown, that should be really expensive.
Yeah. It is. It used to be really expensive. Like, it was hard for people to get apartments for 22, you know?
Yeah. Like I had to move a little bit outside of downtown just to get something decent.
Exactly.
And that too, I had to share it. I can't get anything by myself. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, that also means that a lot of people have left the city, not just outside towards Ontario, but a lot of people left because there's a big international population in downtown.
Yeah.
You look at students, you get young professionals, all sorts.
Yeah, because everybody wants to build their family, right? And to build your family, you can't really build a family in downtown. You need that house space. You need that garden. You need to be in a place where kids can interact with other kids, and there's parks and there's schools, and it's open, and you can drive your bicycle on the street at like 2 a.m. and you're not going to be run over by a car.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
But at the same time, like for young professionals like us, we want to be in Toronto because we want to build something, a foundation that then we can move out and settle.
Exactly.
So
exactly. Yeah. Right. And then the other thing that we also have to look at is we're looking at the idea of a retiring population, because I think there was a statistic, and I don't really remember this 100%, but there was a statistic that the population, like, guess triangle is sort of inverted, right? Because there's more people who are in that 50, 60 age bracket getting close to retirement than there are people who are like 20 and 30.
Yeah. A lot of fewer people are having kids now. A lot of people wait a little longer. And this is a big issue in Europe, by the way. Their populations are declining.
Exactly.
Right now. And even in Japan, that was a problem too. Japan started like marketing that you guys need to, start having kids.
Yeah.
And I feel like even in Europe, they're kind of pushing it. But I feel like that's just a changing mentality, and that has a big economic impact as well.
It probably does, because that will also, because as we get closer and closer to a time where artificial intelligence is going to be, a strong factor,
a declining population might help us.
Exactly, because obviously, like the more and more, like if you think about it, right? When it comes to outsourcing, a lot of people here lose their jobs because companies want to outsource, because it's cheaper to send the labor to Bangladesh, India, China, Pakistan, wherever, right?
Yeah.
And when you do stuff like that, obviously you lose jobs. But then when you automate those jobs, you don't even have to pay for those outsourced people.
You just need one person to supervise. You have one big investment in the technology itself.
Yeah.
So the next 20 years, you're good.
Yep. And it like out of economic theory, we're basically just pushing the production frontier forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So we're getting more and more efficient, but we don't need as many people.
Amortizing the cost and everything.
Exactly.
It helps you out at the end.
Right?
Yeah.
And then then another idea that we also came up with was the idea of, and this may be quite controversial given that artificial intelligence is coming up, we were thinking, is there any economic benefit of actually having kids? Like, why are people really shifting away from this idea of building a family when at one time, like in the 60s and 70s, a 2-car garage and a white picket fence was, the American dream?
Yeah. But what's the American dream now?
Yeah. Is there an American dream? I
mean, nowadays you also have to think about the social media presence and social media influencers. The scope is changing now. A lot of people are just trying to do look at us. We're doing a podcast in the hopes that we might become something. A lot of people are moving away from that 9-to-5 job now.
Yeah.
And that used to be part of the American dream. You go there, you work hard, you work the 9-to-5, you earn
go up
money,
the ranks.
You go up the ranks, and then you can buy your house, 2.5 kids and a pet.
2.5 kids?
That was the average, yeah. That's what it was. You get a white picket fence, a nice blue house, 2.5 kids.
Exactly.
And a nice little puppy.
And considering we're talking about this whole idea of an American dream, is it still an American dream? Like we're seeing what happens in America now, with Trump being what Trump is.
People rushing the Capitol.
Yeah.
Hey, what's the impact of social media on economics?
Yeah. I feel like that in itself should be just a branch of economics, right? Because remember, there was a time where Facebook was channeling all of these political ads, political campaigns, right? I think Facebook was fairly democratic.
Yeah.
Or I think it just depended on the type of person you were.
Yeah.
So if you were democratic, you were only shown videos that promoted the Democratic Party, and if you were Republican, you would only show videos that promoted the Republican Party, right? So that just strengthened people within their own, subconsciously strengthened people within their own
like
wants, right?
Nowadays, like everything's listening to you. You talk about, for example, like I spoke about buying a mic. Like remember we were talking about renting this,
Exactly.
and we're talking about starting a podcast. Literally the next minute, I'm on Instagram and I see an ad on a podcasting app.
Exactly.
So of course, whatever we do, whatever we say, and whatever we search on the internet is now being filtered in, and they're using an algorithm, and then they show you what you want to see or what you said.
Yeah, all this big data, all of this data science that's becoming such an important part of our industry, and an important part of our lives is actually, in many ways, it has a very positive impact.
Yeah,
because it helps people really analyze trends, so
There's
know
more
where things. So like, remember there was, you see, when we used to study this in school, right? Remember we used to always talk about this level of this degree of uncertainty, like, investor speculation or consumer speculation, right? By analyzing all this big data, we're going to get to a point where the speculation factor is not going to be as significant as it is now. Yeah. Right.
And at the same time, you also think about, like, what about big social media investment influencers? Like, for example, let's say you're on Twitter and you follow this guy who has like 20 million followers, and he just talks about his stock picks.
Like Elon Musk, when he said, you know what, everybody just do Dogecoin, and Dogecoin flew.
So right? Is that insider trading? Is that market manipulation? Like, after doing CFA, I've learned a few things about, like, ethics. Yeah. And you talk about, like, how social media is playing a bigger role. And of course, like, social media is moving so fast that the laws can't keep up. Like, someone just goes on to Twitter and says, buy Dogecoin, like Elon Musk.
Like that whole Reddit thing, right? That whole Reddit thing where everybody was just buying and holding, right? So diamond hands. And
like I'm not saying it is, but like, just I'm talking about as like a perspective as an outsider. Isn't that a form of market manipulation?
In a way that really counts as, because at the end of the day, we're trying to influence a market that's supposed to be, to a degree, to an extent, random.
Yeah. So right? I feel like this is what's happening right now. There are two sides. I'm sorry, we're going to go on this tangent, but like, let me just say this. On one side, you have people who are saying that, why would you bet against a company? That's wrong. I agree with that. Like, you're literally betting against someone to fail. Yeah. And that's crazy. Like, that's so mean.
That is.
But on the other hand, you also think about this, that if you don't do that, companies will be inflated.
That's true.
They will be overpriced. And at the same time, people think they have a lot of money, and one thing can go bad, and they're gonna get corrected. Yeah. Like, quote unquote, market correction happens, and people are gonna lose a lot of money. Right. So why not bet on them failing now, or saying that, okay, you don't really bet on failing them, you're betting on them to be corrected. You're saying that this is not what you're worth. Yeah. You're worth a lot less. So I feel like there's that little gap between those who know what they're doing and those who have an idea of what they're doing.
And and I guess it's obviously not. And I think the blame also falls. I don't know if blame's the right word, but let's just stick with blame for now. Yeah. But it falls in multiple categories, right? Like, one of them is the venture capitals. Like, so obviously we're gonna like
go deeper
into this, but you have like all these, what's it called? You have all these startups that require all this venture capital funding, right? Yeah. And the way these venture capitals do is not only do they value the technology, but they try to inflate the value of the technology, because it helps the venture capital get a lot more money that way. Yeah. But then it's also more pressure on the people who are requesting funding, because they need to meet that certain target, and if they don't meet that target, then it's a big issue, and it could result in a lot of liability.
And what was the stat? Like 1 in 5 or 1 in 10?
1 in 10. I think it's 1 in 10 startups
actually succeed,
right?
It's a huge risk that you take, and you're taking a loan, and as a venture capital, like venture capital fund, you're taking a huge risk.
You take a very
and you require a huge return. So for example, if you're a fund, venture capital fund, and I'm a startup, I want money to start my business.
Of course.
And because you're a venture capital fund, you are going to require a higher return than a normal investor.
Exactly.
So now I have two pressures. Now I'm getting money. I think it could be successful, but he's not sure. So he wants a higher return. Yep. Now that pressure's in my head. Okay, I need to make sure I earn this much so I can give him back his money. Yeah. So I can grow.
Right.
So
and
now
then
it's
and then
like-
on top of that, as you get more and more investors, you have to sort of conform to their wants and needs as well, right?
Yeah.
Because as a company distributes its management, you have all of these, you have more voting to be done.
I know
right?
you
You
have
can-
this thing called like covenants, like debt covenants.
Mhm.
They're basically like, they're like rules that you have to follow in a way.
Yeah.
Like for example, like you have, so in a way to like gauge a company's performance and its value, you look at ratios,
Yeah.
like asset turnover and all that stuff. So basically
Yeah.
like how much debt you have and how much is equity, like basically shares. So you have to be holding certain level of ratios to be able to continue doing business,
Exactly.
or else the people who gave you that loan are going to ask for it back.
Remember when we did corporate finance and we talked about
Yeah, this
equity
was CFA too.
and debt, and we did like E
Yeah.
plus V and E plus D, E over E plus D
Yeah,
to
and
get
whack.
those percentage and whack.
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 Weighted average. Something.
Cost of capital.
There you go. See?
Weighted average cost of capital. Okay. I think it's time that we close off our test episode.
Yeah.
And I hope that this sort of gives people a little bit of excitement, I guess, because I hope that people actually enjoy the stuff that we talk about and they
Yeah.
want to see us continue.
Yeah.
But I think this also gives us confidence that like we were just able to have this conversation more or less off the top of our heads.
Yeah, we just wanted to know if you could handle 30 minutes of just talking about it. Like, yeah, maybe everything we said is not right or wrong, but we're still trying. And I
Yeah.
feel like this will help us hone that skill for us.
Of course, I
So-
agree with that.
Yeah.
So we will see you guys at our next episode, and stay tuned to the stuff that we do. We might create social media. We'll probably create social media because
And we will figure out an intro and outro very soon.
yes, that's a work in progress.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Take care.
See you guys.